I know it does. Okay. So
Good
that's perfect
morning.
timing. Yeah, good morning, because you were just pointing at a new addition to your background there, and I'm very confident that it is by far the best thing you've got in your background. That
Oh,
looks,
wow. That's
I
I
mean,
don't know. I like my little ceramic cactus.
no, I don't agree.
Todd,
New
what are we going to talk about today?
Wow, let's go there before we tangent. We are talking scaling before anybody gets on and anybody knows what we're talking about.
We have, yeah. What do you want to talk about? Scaling?
Scaling. I want to talk about that art. That's pretty
Yeah.
good.
TJO
Oh,
makes art.
that's where you're going. .com. The goal is to have
.com.
that thing up. Oh yeah, Paul, let's go. First, Omar, scaling. Let's go. You guys are
For real,
ready to
I
rock
really
and roll?
like it. I think that it fits my aesthetic. I like the kind of sunset ombre vibe thing we've got going.
Yeah,
Good to go.
I'm happy. I started making a new one last night, actually.
Oh,
Slightly
awesome.
different.
That's
So I'm
good.
going to do some different ones.
Omar's excitement on scaling is
Exactly
the
what
same
we're
as my excitement. I actually, oh look, little shout outs for
Oh,
your
let's
Instagram. That's
go.
so
Look
cool.
at this
Yeah, look
guy.
at that.
This is what
That's
I'm talking
great.
about right here. Christian doing his thing right here.
So we're gonna
You
shout
gotta
out my
just
pet portraits next week.
exactly,
We're just
exactly.
using the platform to self promote.
There we go. All right.
I think it's Thursday, Brad.
Yeah, what day is today? I'm with you though. It feels yes, we lost a day because of Monday travel time.
Yeah, the week
Um,
is a blur. I agree.
yeah.
This is how confident I am in the days of the week right now. I see Happy Wednesday, and I was like, oh, we usually do this on Thursdays. I didn't
I
even
wonder
notice
why
that we
we're doing it.
changed
I
it.
wonder why we're doing it on Wednesday today and how I actually made it here.
Oh, man. Yeah, it has been a short week. We were at the mastermind last weekend. For those of you that joined us last weekend, you may remember we YouTube lived from our hotel rooms in Orlando, Florida.
With the same checkered
Same
background.
checkerboard background.
I would love to hear Brad's on. I know Brad was there. Brad, what's the biggest takeaway you got from the mastermind?
Yeah, great idea.
Um,
I hope it
and
has something to do with
leadership or coach development? Is that
coach
where you're going
development.
with?
No,
Selfishly?
any takeaway we'll take. Yeah,
It's probably his hot
he's
seat more than
thinking.
likely. Yeah,
Yeah,
probably his hot seat.
was he in your hot seat group?
He was.
Oh, no way. Okay, that's cool. I heard that those went really well.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
But with this, we're talking scaling. So we've talked before, stimulus, right? We program for the best, we scale for the rest. And oftentimes people think of scaling as, hey, I'm going to tell you guys what the stimulus is of this workout. I'm going to tell you what I'm looking for with the stimulus as far as like, hey, this load should feel like this, or the time I want is this. And then oftentimes we put a hard cap and we let people pick what they want and say, choose wisely. How's that approach to scaling?
Well, it's not the wisest approach because when you
not?
say choose wisely, I just don't think that that's possible. It like contradicts, right? Because we're asking our athletes to choose, but they're likely not armed with the knowledge in order to choose the wisest thing for themselves. So while we do give options, it's our job, in my opinion, as coaches to very strongly guide them to those options. So I think the options are great because it gives them a little bit of autonomy, right? To figure, okay, I've got to be able to do this first round unbroken. So I'm going to try to pick that weight. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it should be the coach's call whether or not they've picked the weight that is appropriate for them.
Yeah, and I love that. And it's like, ultimately, it's up to us to ensure people are scaled correctly. It's not up to the athlete. Now, like you said, depending on how experienced the athlete is, they might have a little bit more autonomy to figure that stuff out. And the way I describe it is you might have a little bit more negotiation power with me if you've been around for a while, if you make good choices most of the time, if you've got good justification for what you're doing. But ultimately, the approach that we take is like, it's up to us. It's not up to you.
Yeah.
I need you to hit the stimulus. I need you to get out of this workout what I want you to. And to ensure that that happens, I'm going to help you decide on the load you're going to be lifting, the number of reps you're going to be doing, the movement variation that you're going to be doing, and all of that. Yeah. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more, but I want to pop these up since we asked Brad this question. 2 things to take away from the mastermind: feedback to coaches, staff, and self. Create that feedback loop.
Yep.
Kristin talked about that a lot. And then, yeah, having a dream, having a goal, but you've got to have action items. And you and I have talked about this, right? With like, hey, cool, me. I remember talking about my art website, and you're like, yeah, you just put a checklist together and just do the little things. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And it's been slowly but surely, but I'm getting there. Can't just think of big picture without the actionable steps to get there.
Nice callback to your art website again, by the way.
Yeah, and if you guys didn't see the link in the comments, you should go and look at that. Yeah, that's what we're here.
No, that's good. But no, it's true. It's like we, having those big goals and big goals and big dreams is important. But what gets us there are those little tiny small daily action steps. So
I like this too. Like Tosh and Fern cemented the idea of define what success means to me and then keep going. It is so interesting, especially like in the hot seats. A lot of people would talk about a number of clients that they wanted. I mean, oddly enough, the number was like typically like 120, 125. And then it was like, why? And they're like, I don't know. I just think it's a good number. And I know I've been at that point in my journey too, where I'm like, yeah, I want more members and this looks like a good number. Well, why is that? Well, because it's more than I have now, and more is typically better. And that doesn't always, like, there's got to be a why behind it. What does success actually mean? Is more always better? And if you don't know where you're headed, it's going to be hard to actually get there, right?
Yeah.
What's the what's the line from Alice in Wonderland on what path to go to? You know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Keep going. Never seen that before?
I mean,
which road should I take? Right?
The right one or the left one?
Yeah, right. Know. The Cheshire Cat or whatever you call it. Anyways, pretty much was like, which road should I take? Well, it depends on where you want to go. And if you don't know where you want to go, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to that degree. All right, cool.
I know what you're talking about with Alice in Wonderland, but I couldn't give you, I wasn't going to even try to give you the quote. Yeah.
Got it. All right.
No, I think all that stuff is great. And it really reminds me of, conversations I've had a lot in the past where it's like, who creates that rule? Like we create our own versions of everything, where it's like, yeah, I want 125 members. It's like, why? It's like, because that's how many I think I'm supposed to have.
Because that's more than I have now.
Yeah, it's just with anything, it's like go to school, go to college, get married, have the career, buy the house. Like it's just this, your gym is successful, I guess I need to open another location. It's like, but do you? What does that mean? Do you? Yeah. So I love it. I love thinking about stuff like that and really kind of determining.
And I think we can actually tie this back into our topic with the sense that like so many people think as athletes, and maybe even sometimes it comes from the coaches, that if you're not doing the workout as prescribed, then you didn't do a good workout.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And so it's like,
how many times have you told somebody, let me ask you this. How many times have you told someone, hey man, good job. Oh, thanks. But I fill in the blank.
I scaled it. Yeah. But I
didn't do the ring dips. I used a band for the ring dips. Or like, oh, well, thanks. But I bumped the run down to a 300 instead of a 400. Like,
and you're like,
almost every time I tell someone good job, if they have, it's like they have this compulsion to say thanks, but, and then tell me how they scaled it. I found myself doing it the other day. Someone was like, oh, you did, whatever. I did Chad in my garage, 1,000 box step ups for time. I did not do 1,000 box step up for time. I changed it a little bit. And when someone, oh, you did it. I saw you did it by yourself. That's great. Oh yeah. But and then I caught myself. I'm like, no, yeah, thanks. I did the version of it that was the best for me on that day at that time. Day. And I'm proud of myself that I got it done. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was hard and I sweat and I did all the things. Yeah. So I think that's a big piece, is like so many people think that If it's not RX, and either that's the individual athlete or that's the culture that we're creating in the gym of like, hey, this is the big deal. And so we want you to get as close to that as you can. You shouldn't scale very much. And if you can do any of the RX versions of the movements or the weights, then you should do that, even if that means that we're going to put a hard time cap and it's a 5-round workout and you're going to get 3.5 rounds and you're going to stop right there. It's like, you didn't actually do the same workout. If you did 3.5 rounds and I did 5 rounds, even if you did more weight or more reps of a particular movement or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's my big thing with time caps. You know, we've talked about this before, but that's where, I mean, tell me what you think, Todd. If you see a time cap on every workout, like how is the time cap beneficial versus how is it not used appropriately?
How is it beneficial? It's beneficial if it's a day potentially where you're going to like it's a workout that has just a high volume of movements that probably everybody can do as prescribed, and there's only a few people maybe that are going to finish the workout, and it's like, hey, cool, we're going to do whatever it is today, and it's a 40-minute workout, and so we're going to put a hard, it's a 35-minute workout and we're going to put a hard cap at 40 minutes because you're going to get the same feeling if you work for 40 minutes of whatever these movements are, right? I think it's very rare that is actually the case. If it's Fran or if it's like the workout that we've talked about, which we can put in the chat right here. We want to put this one out there.
Yeah.
If you guys are in coach development, you guys have seen this one before. Let me type this up for you. 5 rounds, 15 thrusters, 135 and 95. 15 toes to bar, and 75 double unders. Number 1. How did that turn out? Yep, it doesn't show up in the comments quite as good as it did in my typing there,
but you guys get the deal.
Number 1, look at that thing. Let me know what's your idea of what the stimulus is, and then how do we take that thing and scale that appropriately to ensure the stimulus? Now, as you guys are thinking through that, let's talk about a couple things. Number 1, I'm talking about progression drop-offs for the win. That is such a cool way to figure out how to scale of using the specific warm-up, having steps in a progression. I see this happen a lot of times in like gymnastics movements where it's like, hey, I'm going to progress. I've heard it called like the bus stop method, where you're going to get off the bus wherever you stop. And it's like, hey, team, this is going to be the version of this muscle up that you're going to do today in the workout. Obviously, we probably need to approach the volume or the reps in addition to what the movement is specifically, but that's a great way to ensure that, once again, we're the ones scaling for people. Omar makes mention of injuries are important, asking that question and then checking in with people, because you and I both know that not everybody's willing and eager to be like, hey, I've got something going on. And so we need to make sure that we are checking in with people in addition to that. Just like Amit says here, warm-ups are a great barometer to see if somebody's moving weird or they just don't look like they normally do. Checking in, making sure that there's nothing wrong there. All right, let's see. Cool. How do you balance stimulus or expected rounds and reps with defining success for themselves? Tell me more. What do you mean by that, Brad? It's like, how do I get my athletes to realize that hitting the stimulus is
the
success, win, as opposed to the RX version? Provide some clarity there and let me know.
Yeah, that's how I would
dude,
guess
Brad,
it,
if this is workout 25.1, this will be the lowest signups for the open of all time. No one will see that and want to do it, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Brad tells us what he thinks that the stimulus for that workout's going to be, 16 to 21 minutes. And I think you're spot on. I look at this as like 16 is going to be very fast. 20-ish is probably going to be the sweet spot. So if you're building a lesson plan, Cabo, how much time are you putting into this thing? What are you allotting?
25.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
25.
here we go.
So go back to that one really quick.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of wrap up the time cap situation there. So I'm putting 25 minutes on my lesson plan, which is not the same as telling my athletes there's a 25-minute cap. Because my goal is to, hey, AAA, what up? My goal is to scale everyone appropriately so that they all finish within that 20-minute-ish. So like 21, 22 minutes. I'm allotting myself 25 on my lesson plan so that if I scale everyone correctly, everyone will finish that entire 5-round workout in underneath that time. Versus if we are using the time cap to give us a little bit of a get out of jail free for the scales, I don't really have to necessarily scale everyone appropriately because no matter what, at 25 minutes, everyone's done, even if that means somebody only got 3.5 rounds because they're going too heavy or the volume's too much on the double unders, etc.
Yeah. And no, Brad, I think your stimulus that you said here, 16 to 21, is what we believe the stimulus to be. The wiggle room is not up to 30. The wiggle room is up to 25. So I think we're going to have 25 minutes for the workout, hoping in really trying to scale to where everybody finishes in 20-ish. But if there's a little wiggle room and I allow somebody to go RX that's probably borderline whether they should, or somebody slows down a little bit more than they should, I don't have to cut them off. And everybody should be done in under 25. That would be where I take this thing.
Quick shout out to Bill.
There we
Good
go.
to see you, Bill.
Yes, for
Thanks
sure.
for being here.
Yes, sir.
Love the hats.
Now,
oops, sorry. We're competing with the
who's going to win this
There you
thing?
go. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this one right here, if you look at the workout as is and don't consider the totality of 5 rounds of this thing and also the totality of the rep range and the loading, you're spot on. And I do think some very high level athletes, in fact, we've had a discussion behind the scenes with Pete going, I think this is closer to 15 minutes. And I'm like, Pete, for you,
Pete.
It probably is. Former CrossFit Games athlete multiple times, probably so. But one round of this, yes, can you do 15 unbroken thrusters when you're fresh? When you're fresh at 135, probably so. Can you do 15 unbroken toes to bar when you're fresh or after 15 thrusters in the first round? Probably so. Can you do 75 unbroken double unders in 1 minute? Absolutely. But as soon as you do that in the first round, what happens to your heart rate and therefore what happens to everything else after the fact?
Yeah.
What's
Are you really asking me? The heart rate goes high. Yes.
Yes, your heart rate goes high and you want no part of that barbell. The sets, like, unless you're a monster, 15 thrusters at 135 for gentlemen or 95 for ladies is really, really, really challenging. And even sets of 15 toes to bar is really, really, really challenging. In 75 double unders is very realistic, but you're not going to want to pick up the rope.
Yeah. And hold on to it for the 75 reps. And again, it's the compounding effect of the 5 rounds.
Yes.
That really starts to come into play. And so that's kind of the key. Like, you can look at these things in isolation, but once we start to pull them all together and see how they're going to interfere with each other, and then you think every time, like, let's say, you do the thrusters in sets of 5. I think that'd be a great guideline for people, 3 sets of 5. But every time you drop that bar on the ground, that's, maybe 10 seconds right there, and it adds up.
And it's probably more than that because it's not a 95-pound bar, right? We're even 5 rounds of a 95-pound bar. That one's doable. But if you drop it, you can drop it, take 2 breaths, and grab the bar again. At 135, you're going to drop it. You're going to do that little like barbell cha-cha thing where you step up, step back, turn around. Like, you're going to want no part of picking that up again.
And that time goes, like, it sucks away quicker than I think people realize, and then you add that up over 5 rounds, and then Yeah, that's kind of where the length comes in. So
we determine what the stimulus is. Cool. We've just talked about, Brad, I think nailed it. 16 to 21 is ideal. I'm going to allot for 25 in my lesson plan to give me a little bit of wiggle room. And now, what's your approach to scaling in general? And I've got something I'm going to show, but tell me just off the top of your head, if you're thinking scaling, where do you go with it?
Okay, well, to preserve the stimulus, I'm thinking the least amount to scale is where I'm going to start, and then I'll just go more from there. So I almost think it's like clicks, right? Like one click, what am I going to do? Well, first thing is going to be scaling the load on the thruster, right? Because now we're keeping the thruster, keeping the volume, and we're just making it a little lighter. And then what's the next click? Well, maybe we've got to scale it a little bit more beyond that for whatever that means. If we look at the toes to bar, that's a good example, right? Maybe somebody doesn't have toes to bar. So now we have to look at scaling the movement a little bit. But yeah, and what you just shared, right? That equation, force times distance over time is equal to power, which we know is equal to intensity. And so we want to scale the intensity first without changing any of the movements. So I want to keep everything as close as I possibly can to the workout as it's written. And once I do that, if I need to scale a little beyond that, then I can do that. But first step is just trying to scale the intensity, which means we're looking at the load, we're looking at the distance, and we're looking at the time.
Yeah, and this is what I use. Like, I like to have a template. I like to have a system. It allows me to not miss things when I'm like randomly thinking through and like, oh, maybe this is what we scale first, or sometimes it's this. I miss something.
Mm-hmm.
And so this to me is like memorizing the points of performance for a movement and having a structured system on what I'm looking for when I'm coaching a specific movement. So here I'm like, all right, we've got a workout. First thing that I'm going to scale is the load. And so you look at the obvious load in that workout, which is going to be thrusters at 135. And so what should that load feel like? And we've talked about it a little bit already. Like, what should that load look like and feel like, even for our top athletes in the gym? What do we think is a realistic expectation for those rounds of 15, Kayla?
I mean, I think realistically for the rounds of 15, we're looking at breaking it up 1 to 2 times, right? Like maybe we do 8 and 7 on that first round, and then we just try to hold on 3 sets of 5. I think it's unrealistic to think even our top athletes are going to go unbroken on those thrusters for all 5 rounds.
Yeah, and I'm pretty confident that like the athletes that I let do this RX, I'm going to be looking for them to be able to do it in 3 sets.
Mm-hmm. So 5, 5, and
right?
5. Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So I know that this should be heavy-ish.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do this.
Can you scroll? Are you writing?
That? I am. Let me see what's happening here. There we go.
There we go. Thanks.
Cool. Sweet. 3 sets, 5 reps. And so, to be perfectly honest with you, most of the athletes in my gym, very few are going to be doing 135-95. I might have a few that are doing 115-75. I'll probably have a good portion of people that are doing 95-65, because this is still a huge volume. Even athletes like Fran is 45 reps. This is 75 reps.
Mm-hmm.
So even athletes that can do Fran in 5 minutes, this is almost double the volume of reps of Fran.
And you're also, when you're doing Fran, it's only 3 rounds. It's a descending rep scheme.
Yes.
And you're pairing it with only one other movement that is very complementary to the thruster. And so once again, taking in to account of how many rounds it is, and we have to stick with that 15, the round of 15, which is arguably the worst round of Fran. We've got to do that 5 times. And you're pairing it with a couple more movements that are a little more challenging than the pull-ups. All of that is going to impact what that thruster feels like.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So we determine what the stimulus is, 2 to 3 sets per round. I'm going to find a load that my athletes can do 2 to 3 sets per round for the 5 rounds. And that's
And is
what's going
that
to
how you
dictate.
would brief it in the whiteboard brief? Is that what you would tell them?
Yeah, I'd be like, hey guys, go through the workout, and then it'd be, hey, I'm looking for this thing to take about 20 minutes. In order to do that, we need no more than 3 sets per round on the thrusters. Well, that leads us to toes to bar. And tell me this, well, let me actually ask you this. What additional load is there in this workout?
For the toes to bar, is what additional load? It's your body weight.
Yeah. So we've got loading. And so the obvious one is going to be the 135 here.
Yep.
But the additional loading is 15 toes to bars. So how do we change or scale the loading of a toes to bar?
I don't know.
I would consider changing the range of motion to some degree, changing the loading of this thing.
Got it. I see what you're saying.
Would you agree with
consider
that?
the range. Yeah. I just wasn't thinking range of motion equaling to load, but I'm picking up what you're putting down.
If you think about something like we describe, and we give this example at the level 1 when we're discussing an L pull-up. Cool. Well, an L pull-up, what's the load in an L pull-up? It's body weight.
Yep.
But why does it feel heavier? Because of the lever, because the legs are out in front. And so we can lighten the load by bringing the feet down and turning it into a strict pull-up. Same thing here with the toes to bar. In my mind, I'm like, hey, we can lighten the load by decreasing the range of motion. So we can go
follow-up question.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
Well, actually, let me ask my follow-up question. Because the next step in our equation, right, is distance or reps. And so you've got 15 toes to bar. So you have someone, let's say, that can do toes to bar.
All right, let's get there in a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut you off because I want to loop back around to that. So,
all right.
So just right off the bat, 15 toes to bar. We've talked about, I think in an ideal world, this thing is 3 sets of 5, but I'll be perfectly honest. I'm going to be happy for myself and probably for some of my RX athletes if it turns into 5 sets of 3.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And even in the last round, there's probably some of those quick singles that people do when they're midsection and their hip flexors are completely burned out from doing everything. Yeah. So I'm going to say 5 times 3 is what I'm looking for. And so what could we do that? If I'm just scaling the quote unquote loading, this could be like toes to eye level, toes to chest level, knee raise, something like that. I don't want it to be a version of a knee raise or a toes to bar that they're doing 15 unbroken every single round. We've not got it right if that's the case.
Yeah, because then it's too easy. We're missing we're missing the stimulus. We have to remember again what it's going to be like for our higher end athletes, that we're not expecting them to go through all 5 rounds getting all 15 toes to bar unbroken. So it's the same when we start to scale people.
Sweet. There's no other, you think of the body weight of the jump rope, but I don't think of that as a movement that we're decreasing or increasing load with of double unders. So, all right, we've covered the load. Now this gives me options here. Sweet. I can lighten the weight of the thruster to ensure the stimulus, 3 sets of 5. I can quote unquote lighten the weight of the toes to bar by changing the range of motion slightly to get 5 sets of 3.
Okay, so when we're seeing this on your list here, the scaling, 15 thrusters, heavy-ish, that's your scale in order to get 3 sets of 5. And then 15 toes to bar, reduced range of motion with 5 sets of 3. Okay, got it.
Change range. Sweet. All right. But now we move to distance or reps. And so right off the bat, and go ahead and finish your thought. You were talking about, what if I've got somebody that can do toes to bar? So this is typically where people go, is it's gymnastics movements, especially a little bit more advanced versions of gymnastics movements. They're like, they can do it, but 75 reps in a workout's probably not realistic. So,
and this is also where I think people struggle a little bit with which scaling option they're going to choose, right? Because so often we have people that can do, like you said, you have someone that can do toes to bar, and not just one, but they can string toes to bar together, but the volume perhaps is going to be a little bit hard. So this is where we can consider just cutting the reps down and having them do the full range of motion.
Cool. So what would be your thought process then for how do you determine what the right appropriate volume of reps ends up being?
Yeah, and this one again gets a little tricky because it depends on the person in front of you, what their capacity is, but we're always going to loop back to what the stimulus is. So if we're saying we're okay with our athletes, perhaps doing 5 sets of 3, ideally we're doing 3 sets of 5, you can think the time range that we're looking to spend on that section, so we're thinking, okay, maybe like 45 seconds to a minute, maybe a minute and a half.
Yeah, I would think that it'll be
like 90 seconds.
Max. Like
Mm-hmm.
5
Yep.
reps every 30 seconds, which knowing the cycle time of toes to bar seems like a lot, but when people are out of breath,
Mm-hmm.
it slows
Yeah.
down quite a bit.
Yeah. So you can kind of use that as just a guiding factor, right?
And so, but would you want, hey, just do as many singles as you can until you get to 90 seconds, or would you want something else? Like
No,
what
I
else
don't
would you?
want them to just off the gate do singles. Like I want them to still be able to string a few together. So it might be, what do you have here? 15 toes to bar, change range of motion. Oh, I
5
see.
by
Or
3.
full range of motion. And so the number is 15. I know a lot of people, let me ask you this. I know a lot of people do like a percentage off the gate. I don't typically think that way. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, we'll just do like 30% of the main number. I more think
I like math and I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like I like
I
percentage,
don't
but
like
I don't like.
math, and I also don't like that. Yeah, so it would likely be whatever their capacity is if they're comfortable doing like sets of 2 to 3. And I know that that's pretty much that's what they can do is sets of 2 to 3 fresh. Then still same thing. Maybe we're going to do like 4 sets of 2 and we turn it into a total of 8 per round.
Yeah, I try to look at the sets. And so to ensure the stimulus, if I know like 5 sets of 3 to get to 15 is what I'm going to allow my RX athletes to do, then I'm probably going to look at like, hey, I want 5 sets. More than likely that's going to be like you said, probably in the 10 range, maybe in the 8 range, where it's like, hey, you probably won't be able to maintain 5 sets of 2 throughout. And so maybe it's like 4 sets of 2 and a set of 1 to get to 5 sets or something like that. So I'm probably in that 8 to 10 range is what I'm looking for there. So to maintain the full range of motion. And if I know that they can do 2, but then they rest a long time before they can do 2 more, then maybe it's 6 to 8 rather than 8 to 10. But full range of motion, and I'm going to say 5 sets. That gives us the idea of like, all right, it's going to be less reps.
And I think it's worth noting at this point that there's not a hard right or wrong answer
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely.
It's all about the thought process and making sure that we're just being thoughtful behind why we're choosing what we're choosing. We talk a lot about just doing different scales. If you scaled it, if the last workout we had a lot of toes to bar, we had you change the range of motion but keep the volume. This workout, hey, let's do the full range of motion so we can actually do that full toes to bar, and now we're going to cut the volume. So we change it up a little bit, and even when we're cutting the volume, we may not, it's not like, oh shoot, what was that formula that we figured? It just have some thought behind it, and then assess after the workout.
And yeah, you guys were dropping plenty of comments. Go ahead and start throwing the stuff back in there. Let's see. I want to keep going on this thing, but Brad said something. Let's be real. In this workout, the wheels can fall off fast, and then it's survival mode. Show me someone who can pace a 20-minute workout that isn't a games athlete. Yeah. Not only pace a 20-minute workout that isn't a games athlete.
I can pace a 20-minute workout.
Yeah, I can pace. And I would do it exactly. I'm like, sweet. I'm doing my 5 sets from the jump. I'm doing my sets of 3 on the toes to bar from the jump. I'm intentionally breaking up the double unders. Whereas other people that are a little bit maybe more competitive or don't have as much experience are like,
first round,
I can
unbroken.
probably do it unbroken. And then, like you said, Brad, the wheels are completely off.
Yeah.
But
run your own race. Don't get worried about the people that are ahead of you in the first round.
So let's keep going on this. So we're talking reps or distance. What's the other obvious reps that are really high that jump out at us here?
Oh, the double unders.
So
Yeah.
we've got 75 double unders, and cool, unbroken, those can take roughly a minute, but what do you think's realistic over the course of this workout for that?
They're not going to be unbroken.
Right.
And
So what's the rep range look like, or like what's it look like sets wise, right? We want to think stimulus.
3 sets of 25,
Yep.
I'd be totally fine with. Yeah.
Cool.
Because your heart rate's going to be high, your shoulders are going to be fatigued. Even if you're 75 double unders unbroken is no problem. Once again, we add in how many rounds we're doing, what we're pairing it with, and likely we're going to see people need to break those up a little more than they would should it be paired with something else or a different workout.
And so so we got 3 sets of 25 reps. If we're going to be strategically breaking 3 sets, or even not even strategically, just breaking because we're out of breath or whatever reason, about 90 seconds max. I want somebody doing double unders for 2 minutes. And this is probably towards the 4th and 5th round when your heart rate's so high that every time you stop, you reach down and grab your knees, right?
Yep.
And so now all of a sudden I'm like, cool, I use this as the gauge. If I think the RX people can do it in 3 sets to get to 75, what's a realistic number that somebody can do 3 sets and get to? Like, I've got people that can do 10 reps every time they do a set. I've got people that can do 15 reps. If I'm close to 20, I'm probably going to push them towards 75, but it's probably going to be somewhere between like 35 and 50 if I'm scaling the load or the reps here.
The reps total, 35 to 50 total. Yeah.
Yep.
And do you use that time domain as your main guiding factor there? Or do you use more about what you think they comfortably can get in a set unbroken?
I will look at their sets because I know that if they can do 3 sets, it will fall within that timeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they're only doing like 6 reps per set and it's going to take them, 6 sets to get to 50 reps, well, then I know we got an issue and it's going to take way longer than that. So typically, I don't even have to think about timeline. If I'm like, hey, consistently, I see you do 15 in a row before you break, we're going to try for 50 today. And probably in a workout like this, some days I'll try to push them a little bit higher number. This one, I would probably convince them to go a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Hey, you can do 3 sets of 15. Let's just settle for 40 because I know you're going to be a mess in round 3 or later because of the impact of everything else.
And that's the other thing too. I just want to highlight what you just said. We get questions a lot on athletes, what do you do with athletes who are like resistant to scaling or don't want to listen to your scales? But when you give them the reason behind it, or you have a reason behind it when they ask you, and you can provide them with that, that can oftentimes that can just arm you with that knowledge to have a good conversation, right? It's like, hey, I'm not just randomly telling you to do less reps because I don't believe in you. It's like, no, here's why. Like, I want them to be done in no more than 3 sets. You can do about 30 or 20 reps a set pretty consistently. And, we've got 5 rounds of this. And so this is where I came up with that number. And you don't have to do that every time. But again, this is the benefit of having thought behind this and knowing why you're doing what you're doing, is so that when we need to, we can communicate that and just have everybody on the same page here. It's not just this arbitrary thing.
So Brad brings up, when the difference in effort between double unders and singles is so large, how do you scale the quote unquote load of double unders? I encourage them to do tall singles or jump high so as to not sprint through them. In my opinion, I don't think the effort between doubles and single unders for people that comfortably and easily have double unders and people that don't have double unders, that means they're probably not crazy comfortable with singles, is any different. I think most people that don't have double unders and has to do singles, their effort for their singles versus my doubles, who've been doing them for a while and are fairly proficient at them, is roughly the same. And so in my approach, especially in a workout like this, if somebody doesn't have any double unders at all, and I'm going to let them do singles, we're just going to stick with the same number and we're going to do regular single unders, because that takes about the same amount of time as it does for me to do 75 unbroken double unders. And it's going to have roughly the same impact on them from my experience. So Do you have any different thoughts on that, Cabo? Do you
No,
try
I
to change that up?
agree. I agree. I for a workout specific to this with the high volume, I agree. Now, when we have, maybe there's a different workout with a lower volume, maybe the double unders are more of a focus, then again, this is where we change the scales sometimes to challenge our people. So maybe that is a day where I'm like, hey, I want you to just do double under attempts for 90 seconds. Or, hey, we're going to do, the tall jumps. I want you to do those, like, what did you call them? Like tall singles or the jump highs for today. But for a workout like this, I would just have them do regular singles. And I really love those tall singles and the jump high for warm up, like our specific warm up. We're working on like the skill of it. That's usually where I go towards those versus having people do it in the actual workout.
And to Brad's point here, if it's a skill deficiency where they can do double unders, but they trip, this is usually from my experience, like they're just not concentrating hard enough, or they've not been forced to do that. What's the approach there? To your point, in other workouts with less reps, I'm going to give them a number that they have to accomplish. Hey, today's going to be a day that you're going to get all 30 double unders. And even if that means it takes you 6 sets of 5 to get there, we're going to do that. And I'll have a little bit more wiggle room. And even if 30 double unders takes most athletes 20 seconds and it takes them 90 seconds, that's all right. I'm going to let them struggle to start to develop that skill. On a day like this, because of the impact of everything else, I probably just let them do single unders, or this is the time, or that's the athlete where I go, hey, I want double under attempts for 90 seconds. This is where the time comes into play of like, hey, you need to concentrate. You need to actually work on this. I'm not going to let you off the hook with singles. And I'm probably not going to give you a different version of a single, because to get your double unders, you just need to try to do double unders and figure out how to be able to do it when you're tired and you're not concentrating. So that's my approach there. Anything else with that? So one thing that I want to loop back to, and here's the thing, is like, we look at load and we talk through that first. We then go to distance and we talk through that. And from my experience, more often than not, most people will go, all right, I see a weightlifting movement. Like, let me see. Let me go back to this. I see a weightlifting movement like the thruster that's heavy. So I'm going to lighten the load in order to meet the stimulus of 3 sets of 5. I see a challenging gymnastics movement. So I'm going to change the range of motion, or I'm going to decrease the reps. But I think in order to provide variance and scaling, we should look at the option of doing any of these things with any of the movements. And what I mean by that, this could be a day where instead of changing the volume of reps in toes to bar and having them do a full range of motion toe to bar, we stick with the change range of motion and the full volume of reps, but we take the thruster and keep the 135 and we lower the reps. Hey, you're going to do 9 reps. Yep. I know you can do 3 sets of 3. You can't do 3 sets of 5, but 3 sets of 3 is going to let you feel what it's like to do 135 pounds.
Yeah, because there's value in that. There's value in, if I can do the 95, but man, 5 rounds of 15, but I could do, 10 would be good. Sure. I like that.
Yeah. And so even though this is like my sequence, this is my structure, this is the order of importance, it doesn't mean that we have to adhere to this every single time. And in fact, we should provide some variety in this stuff and think through it. And this is like, that's such a great way to get those athletes that like think they're RX athletes, want to be RX athletes, that think for whatever reason that the heavy load is the most important part of this thing. And it's like, cool, I'm going to let you do the RX load today, but you ain't doing 15 reps because I know that's going to take you 4 minutes each round. And I don't have 4 minutes for you each round. So we're going to find a rep range that works for you. And now all of a sudden it's like, cool, they're developing the capacity that they need. We are still accomplishing our goal of providing the scaling options that's going to allow them to hit the stimulus. And we're good with that.
Yeah, because the whole idea is we want people to feel kind of the same at the end of the workout, whether you did it RX or whether you scaled it. And so if you have your RX athlete that easily can do 135, I say easily, but you know what I mean, like 135-pound thrusters for 15 for 5 rounds, and you have someone else that's like 135-pound thrusters for 9 reps for 5 rounds, and it takes them about the same amount of time, and they feel kind of the same at the end, even though the volume is a little bit different. That's where, you know, we can put the check mark there that we accomplished what we wanted to that day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So here's my format. This is my structure. This is my template for scaling. This is a pretty straightforward approach. Now, I think where scaling, there's additional challenge is when we move into workouts or movements that are more complex. So let's say we've got a workout that has, I was going to say either or, but let's just say both. Let's say it's got handstand walks and it's got ring muscle ups, Cabo.
Well, first, I would never program those two together.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't. Yeah, that's stupid. There's no
All right.
There's no fitness in that.
So we've got handstand walks and ring muscle ups. Are we using the we're going to use the template, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
How would you like, if is that what you would do?
I'm thinking, I don't know what how
Here we go. Here we go. Let's
go. It's okay. I don't need to know the actual workout. What I'm going in, let me give you my thought process. What I'm going into that workout with is I'm going into the workout knowing the various essentially progression pieces, or like you referred to, the bus stop. I'm going into it knowing the various ways that my athletes are going to scale, and most of that's going to be determined during the warm-up.
Okay.
5 muscle ups. Yeah. So if you're looking at 5 muscle ups, 5 rounds, 5 muscle ups, it's same thing, right? Like we can go load, we can go distance. You know, do I have athletes that can do muscle ups, but 5 muscle ups for 5 rounds? How quickly do I need these muscle ups to be finished? 3 muscle ups per round is something that would be an opportunity to do, right?
So let's try to put some structure behind this to make it a little bit easier and clear.
That's why I asked if we were going to go through your template.
Well, I was curious on how you would do it in your brain, or like what would be your approach when you're lesson planning. Brad, you are absolutely right. If there was ever a chance, special? If there was ever a chance for me to be in the 99th percentile in the open, it's this workout right here.
Wow, handstand walk, huh? Talk about taking one of your worst things.
Yes, we've talked about that before, right?
We have
My first
talked
ever
about
seminar. We worked together, and that was in there, and I could not do anything, and I was so pissed off.
I want you guys to imagine when you play that game wheelbarrow when you're in elementary school, and one person has to hold the person's feet, and then the other person walks their feet, and you just like walk them like a wheelbarrow. That's basically what both of us, I think, looked like when we were doing our handstand walk attempts. We would just kind of like throw our arms and like walk a little bit. And now look at you. It's 11 years later.
Yeah, we're going 11 years. It's a few more than 11 years later than that. But yeah, it was at my very first seminar. What, Cabo, you had worked maybe 5 or 6 or something like that at that point. You were fairly new, but I was so excited because it's my first time wearing the red shirt. I had been to seminars and just was always like envious of watching them work out at lunchtime and thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, man, this is going to be great. I forget what we did on Monday, but it was Sunday. We get ready. It's a lunch break. And the flow master, Nicole, was like, hey, we're going to do this workout that has stations. One station's going to be handstand walks. The other station's going to be whatever it is. And I was like, you're joking, right? Because I had looked at all the trainers doing workouts and I'd been so impressed. And you just think that they're all like Rich Froning when you're watching them. And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know that any participant that's there watching this will quickly realize that I am nowhere near Rich Froning, how unathletic and unfit I am if this is what we actually do. And sure enough, that's what we did.
Well, I was right there with you. Handstand walk attempts.
Pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was you or probably the only person I said, I was like, watch this. Next time we work together, Kristin, I'm going to be able to handstand walk.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Worked your weakness. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So
I like this overscaling.
So here's the deal. We first need to figure out the stimulus. And so 5 muscle ups for 5 rounds.
How long it takes to do 1 rep.
What's that take?
5 muscle ups. I'm just laughing at that.
If you're
You can't be unathletic and play baseball at a high level.
If you're a pitcher, Steven, you can. And pitchers were non-athletes. I don't know about your school, but that's what we called them at mine.
Were you a
an
pitcher?
Outfielder, I was not. He was,
Okay.
though.
Okay.
So, just kidding.
All right. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Do you want these muscle ups unbroken?
What do you think the stimulus is? What do you think is realistic for an above average athlete at your affiliate?
I think at least the first couple rounds need to be unbroken.
So in my mind, anytime I'm like, hey, some of the rounds should be this and some of the rounds should be that, I average it out and I go, all right, I want 2 sets per round.
Yeah.
Because
I'm thinking first couple rounds, 5, but here's the deal. What is it paired with? It's paired with a handstand walk. There's a lot of interference there. So I don't need my athletes to do all 5 rounds unbroken in order for me to still be okay with them doing unassisted muscle ups. They just shouldn't be doing singles and waiting 2 minutes between each one.
Yes. So in my mind, it's 2 sets. It's a 3 and a 2 for the muscle ups. And that is probably taking, like I would probably account, like it's 30 seconds early, 45, up to 15. A minute.
Yeah. A minute.
And then the 20-foot handstand walk, I think you got people that can do that unbroken to begin with. But I would probably allow somebody to do that in 4 sets. Once again, I'm going to count that as a minute. So I'm completely with you here, Brad. 5 to 6 minutes for an advanced athlete. But I'm looking at this as a 10-minute workout where it's 1 minute per movement.
Yeah.
So
9 to 12. Yeah, I like this.
And here's the deal with this comment, Brad, is like if I overscale this with low ring transitions and bear crawls, you could have athletes doing this in 5 minutes. And I will tell you that if you have an athlete that does this in 5 minutes, you did overscale them. But more often than not, I don't know about you, Kristin, if you've bear crawled in a workout recently.
I hate bear crawling so much.
It's harder than handstand walking, in my opinion. Now, obviously, if you can't handstand walk, then it's not harder. But that's not easy. It's not letting you off. And the other thing with the low ring transitions, from my experience, we scale the low ring transitions, but we don't really coach. And so people go from under the rings, they jump to the top of the rings.
Yeah.
And 5 reps takes no time. And to Brad's point, then it's done in 5 minutes.
I love doing low ring transitions. And then as soon as you pop through the rings, you have to lift your feet up and do an unassisted ring dip.
And oh, by the way, that is crazy challenging.
That is hard. Yeah.
And more than likely, for the athletes that don't have the ring muscle ups and need to do the long ring transitions, they struggle with the transition and they probably struggle with the dip.
Yeah.
And so ensuring that they're actually doing the low ring transitions correctly and doing a strict dip is going to make it hard enough to where I think they're going to be probably pretty similar to our 3 and 2 for our advanced athlete.
Yeah. To that point, I'm not adding more. I'm not doing, okay, you're going to do 10 low ring transitions. Like if we're challenging them in the right way for them, I think 5 is still a perfectly appropriate number.
And so with that, so we talk about, okay, so we make a challenging version of the low ring transitions. So we can either do that by transitioning through, taking your feet off the ground, and then having to do a strict dip. We can raise the rings up a little bit to where you kind of have to jump into the bottom of your transition and then you dip. But the big thing here is that if we're doing the low ring transitions, the way we decrease the load is by having our feet on the ground, but we need to make sure that they actually do the movement and they get to the bottom of the ring dip. Sweet. Once we've done that, this is not easy. Now, for the bear crawl, like for somebody that's proficient with the handstand walk and you have and they're able to do it in 1 or 2 sets to get there, I guarantee you it's going to be about the same amount of time as somebody that's bear crawling. Like it's just cumbersome to bear crawl in my opinion. But if somebody
if you're doing it right, like
Yeah, your weight's actually on your
In
hands. You can
mhm,
go hips high and that kind of stuff.
mhm.
But if somebody doesn't have handstand walks, but they're kind of close, before you scale to a bear crawl, what else would you do, Kabo?
Would you do these 5 wall walks?
I think, well, I made mention of like, I wanted this done in 4 sets. So I'd
Mhm,
probably, instead of 5 wall walks, I'd probably do 4 potentially.
mhm.
That time wise, I think would be pretty similar. It's pretty taxing on the arms, but I don't really think that wall walks set people up for success handstand walking. Yes, it gets them comfortable on their hands, but it doesn't teach any of the body positions. So what could we do there?
One of the scales I've seen done is the, I'm not sure what people call it, like the around the world on a box or
Yep.
up against the wall. So now instead of going forward, you're going sideways, right? Which, that I think is very challenging. I also like kicking up against the wall and just essentially doing like shifting weight, like you could shoulder tap or just kind of shift weight upside down. That one you would have to add any of those, you'd have to add some sort of a metric to, right? Like you'd have to add like a number to, because we're taking the distance away.
Yeah, and so I like this of like, you could do the box and you could do around the world. I've seen people go around one direction and then back around the other direction to get
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
We've got shoulder taps. I think that's great. I would probably, if the athlete felt comfortable with this, I would probably do attempts.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought that was off the table.
Why would
I
it be
thought
off
you
the
said they
table?
can't. Never mind. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm saying I agree. I like the attempts. It's very similar to double unders, in my opinion, where it's
And
like,
yeah, you could do it the same. I'm like, hey, I want my ARCS athletes to do it in 4 attempts. So I'm going to let you see how far you can get in 4 attempts is one way
yes,
on the floor if they feel comfortable. Or you can do the thing. We do this a lot, and this helped me learn handstand walks a lot, is where I kick up towards the wall, but a few steps away, and I walk with my hands towards the wall, and then my feet hit and catch me there. So before I tumble over, my feet catch me, and then it's like I'm going to do 4 attempts with that.
for
Is
sure.
another way to do that.
That's one that you've got to test a little bit before you just tell people to do that one. Because if they're not quite there yet and they just are like crashing and falling into the wall, right?
Yeah, this
That
would
can
be
be a
one of
little
those
bit shady.
bus stop things where
Yeah, for
we're doing a
sure.
progression, and it's like you kick up to the wall like a normal handstand, and then I want you like a hand length behind that, so you can still kick up normally, but then walk
Mm-hmm.
your hands with your feet already against the wall. If you're comfortable doing that, then we can go a little bit farther away. One of the coolest things that I've learned from doing homework reviews in affiliate university with Coach Dev is a scale for handstand walks where you kick up against a wall. You've got a plate in front of you, and you walk your hands onto the plate and then off of the plate, like just a 10-pound plate, which you've
No,
got the
that's
wall for
cool.
support. Yep. And you're working on picking your hands up and
Picking
putting
your
them
hand
down.
up. Yeah, I like that.
It's pretty challenging. Now it's a little bit wider than I think my hands typically go when I'm handstand walking, but it's just another option. But how cool is that? You just gave us, we've got the around the worlds on a box. We've got shoulder taps. We've got stepping on a box. We've got attempts against the wall. We've got attempts on the floor, and we've got bear crawls, and we've
Yeah, and
got
that's
wall
not even
walks.
including some of the things you can do during specific warm up, right? Like, spotting an athlete to lean into your arm and have them walk forward as they're leaning up against you.
Or PVC pipe,
Or
something like that.
PVC pipe. Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I think the whole idea of this is there's not one specific thing, but, try all of them. Not in one
I,
workout, but,
I
just
think to
play
Steven's
around with
point,
it.
attempts get weird because no one looks at the clock. That being said, like 4 attempts, like they don't, from my experience, people don't take a super, super long time. And this would be one, although we want this to be about a 10-minute workout, I think what Amit said up here of like probably 12, I would expect it to be this 9 to 12.
Yeah,
And
I
I'd
like the
allot
9 to 12. Yeah.
15 minutes in my lesson plan,
Hmm.
because this is one of those days where, hey, I'm probably going to let some people really work to develop some skills. And I might let you go a little bit longer on handstand walks. I might let you grind a little bit more on muscle ups and all that as well.
Are you going to scale anyone up?
To weight vests and backwards
Someone
handstand
super
walks?
proficient, and this can be what wraps it up, right? Because this is kind of that, my RX athlete, they need a little more of a challenge. So I need to scale them up, make the weight heavier, are you going to scale people up?
No chance.
No way.
This is one, like, I think
Never.
I'm fairly good at these things, but I can guarantee you I would not do this workout in 5 minutes. I would not be able to hold on to sets of 5 muscle ups. I could probably do the handstand walks unbroken, but I would not be able to do this thing in 5 minutes. And so, of course, I'm not going to scale them up. I'm just going to challenge them to do something different. Either go faster, try bigger sets of the handstand walks, or bigger sets of the muscle ups until things fall apart and see what happens.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I don't know the last time I scaled somebody up.
I know the last time I made someone unscale, they're self-scaling up.
Right.
That makes sense. Like, they wanted to scale up. I'm like, nope, you're not scaling up. Like, here's how we're going to do this. Yeah.
I think
there you go. Like, sure, you're going to scale up. Everything needs to be unbroken. So then they think they're scaling up, but really they're still just doing the workout. They're doing it harder. And that's the idea. Like, most people need to just work harder and look better doing it than they do add a weight vest or add any obstacles, for sure.
Agreed. All right.
We could, this is one of those things, we could talk for hours on this because there's so many different ways to attack it. And I think all the conversations we had here, like, regardless of how we choose to do it, you have the thought behind it and they would all be appropriate.
Yeah. We will be back next week. Once again, this time it's going to be revisiting lesson plans, but like we see with a lot of programming out there, it's going to be talking through lesson plans with 2 pieces, the strength in a Metcon or more skill in a Metcon. So no, that's the case. If you guys want more of this stuff, make sure that you're checking out Affiliate University. If you're an affiliate owner, Affiliate University has business development, coaching development, which is what we're discussing here, obviously. And then if you're a coach and not an affiliate owner and you want more of this, the Knowledge and the Knowledge Pro, this is where you can go to get some more of this information and more access to us. So
we have a little code too, 20% off first month. The Knowledge.
Let's go. The Knowledge. Let's do it. As always, appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for the interactions, and look forward to seeing you next. Is it Wednesday? Guys. Is it Wednesday or is it Thursday?
See you next Thursday. We'll see you next Thursday. Same time, same place.
Thanks, team.
All right. Bye.